Hey everyone, Ben here. Today I'm having a good laugh together with Marcelo Lopez. Marcelo has been around the Stellar Work project from the very beginning, so I'm really happy to have him on the show. This is going to be a fun one, so grab your favorite drink and enjoy yourself. We're doing the same. I didn't want to do an awful long intro this time, so let's dive right in. Hey, welcome to the Stellar Work podcast. Finally, we made it.
Yeah, and long time coming. I think we had first talked about doing this like a year ago or something, and and then I saw that you were shifting somewhat directions and feeling this
You felt the
desire to not
pressure.
be, yeah, this pressure to not be left behind.
Yeah.
you know uh I said, well, now or never. Let me kind of goad him into having me
Uh-huh.
on before the shift happens, and stuff, especially since I've been following you for a while now, and the
Thank you.
direction
Thank
you're
you.
taking, it looks like it's going to be interesting. It's going to
Thank
be
you.
interesting.
You know, one of the good things when you get to know people over the internet, you don't know how to pronounce their first name.
True.
So how do I say it? Like Marcello? Is it?
You could. You could, and I would still probably respond to that because I've been
Because you're the
responding.
only other person in that in our recording studio.
Yeah, well, that's true. But also because I've been responding to at least six different pronunciations of my name since I was a child. Okay. When we had, growing up down here in South Florida, we would have French Canadians that would visit us during the winter. Our neighbor would rent out part of their house to visiting snowbirds, and they would spend several months there. And they would call me Marcel.
Oh,
They would call me
wow.
Marcel because that is the French form of my
Mhm.
name. And then having visited Italy for work, it was like, okay, after 3 days, I was no longer Marcello, I was Marcello. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you come back to South Florida, and you're used to hearing your name pronounced in Spanish, and you're like, no, I don't think that's going to be good enough for a while until you get used to it again, you
Oh.
know,
All
because
right. So help us out there. Like, who are you?
I am Marcelo Lopez.
Marcelo Lopez.
That is the full pronunciation of my name. And it's the Anglicanized form of my name because in Latin America, our culture, we typically borrow both the paternal and maternal last names. And so if I were going to do that, I'd have like three other names beside the two that you're seeing on the screen, but I would never sign it that way. I would never sign it that way.
All right.
Yeah.
So we got your name now, but who are
Who
you? Who,
who
who are you? Like really?
cue the song from the Who. Um, who am I? I'm a father first and foremost. That's beyond anything that I could ever claim to you know to have as an accomplishment in my life. Um, that's my life's work, even though they're adults now. Um, but from how you know me, I carry funny titles after my name. Uh, Certified Scrum Trainer, whatever that means. Accredited Kanban Trainer, whatever that means. For me, what that means, Benjamin, is I like to help people find better ways of doing what they've done. Okay. The way that I got to where I am was a lot of good people investing their time into helping me, and I was raised to give back. And so I generally will take of whatever time I have that I'm not devoting to family, devoting to the community, to help out people who pose questions to me, which is usually how you see me interacting on social media. it's usually as a result of having had a conversation where someone came and said, "Hey, Marcelo, I'm dealing with this. What do you think?" And so we have conversations like this, and that's I guess you could say that's part of the fabric of who I am. I'm very grateful for the things that I've been blessed with, and so I look for ways of just giving back.
Hmm. I've been going through your CV. You've been doing this for so long, man.
Yeah. Longer than I care to admit. Longer than I care to admit. Yeah. And if you're talking about the area of work that we do, it's probably going on 22 years now that I first added, because I didn't replace, added the function of being a scrum master for a team that I was the lead for. Okay. And the way we worked at the time, the team lead was kind of also like the first line manager, although I didn't like to tout that part of my job. One of the least fun things was, oh, we need you to do a performance review at the end of the year. Yeah, yeah, yeah. How it was one of the least fun things about that. But
was that your time at IBM?
Oh, no. I was already at a medical device company based here in South Florida. Yeah, my time at IBM started back in the middle late 80s. We worked on a little something called OS2, which very few people have really heard of these days. But if it hadn't been for that, we wouldn't have something called Windows. Quite literally, many of the things that are in Microsoft Windows today, at least the concepts, the ideas, were borrowed in whole or in part from the work that Microsoft and IBM did back in those times, and stuff. And fun fact, out of that, I wrote a book 30 years ago. Actually, it was 30 years ago, 2 months ago, that it was published. It's no longer in print, of course, and stuff. But while I enjoyed the experience, that's probably why I haven't gotten around to writing another one. Even though people, goad me on at times. Hey, Marcelo, when are you going to write your book? And I'm like, yeah, I already did that. No, not that book. But
we have podcasts now. You don't need to write a book. Just blah into the microphone, and bam, you're a podcaster. Take the transcript, feed it to an AI, got a book.
Wow, that's an interesting subject you just.
Nobody's going to buy it if you're going to market it the way I did now, but
well, yeah, no. Well, the thing is that people have asked me, say, well, Marcello, if you were going to write a book, what book would you write? And given my past experiences, it would be a tell-all book.
A what?
A tell-all book. It would be one of those books. And I say that half jokingly, because you could almost say it might be an expose of some things. I'm not gonna say that I would throw people under the bus, but it was like I've met some interesting characters in my life. I've not been at some of the events that you might recognize, but I've gotten to speak to a fair number of people who were at some of those events, if I wasn't personally, and have, as you might have seen already, certain opinions on certain matters.
Yeah. Like one of the things that I dream of is putting you, Simon Wardley, and Dave Snowden into the octagon, just ranting about other people on the internet, just like for an hour. I would love it.
If we were going to do that, I would have to invite, as part of the tag team, a few other folks. He's going to hate. he's going to hate me for this, but I would have to throw Nigel Thurlow in there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, he's
Yeah,
good at that
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. I love you, Nigel. Whatever it is that I'm saying now, remember I love you. Uh, but I would have to say I'd have to tag him. I would also have to ask someone who is I'll say it this way, quietly wise. And I say this from the perspective that, you know, it, his his work and his experience um has gone underappreciated, under the radar, so to speak, but that belies his 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 personality, and who he is as a professional. Never really sought the limelight, but I'm going to throw him under the bus for a moment, and that's Joseph Pellerine.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
good one, good
Um,
one.
yeah. I'll say it this way: when he talks, I listen.
Hmm.
Simple as that. Okay. I go into full shut up and listen mode. You know, um, and he is very much um contributed to sources of information that I would have never considered originally to take into account, that have helped me help others.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one of the things that I think that makes a difference is never discount information that, even if you don't find useful, grab it, hang on to it. Someone may find it useful in the future. Maybe you're just the vehicle, Benjamin, for someone else's benefit in the future. You
Or
know,
it's a good party gig. It's a good party trick to tell everyone. Like
well,
even if it's not useful to anyone, it could be entertaining, and that could be useful as well.
yeah, I could, yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. It's like, hey, by the way, did you know, hey, blah 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 blah, and stuff.
Did
Uh,
you know Toyota in the 70s and then go on for 2 hours at a party?
yeah, yeah, that would be Nigel. That would be
Yeah,
Nigel. That would be
yeah.
Nigel right there.
He's still at that party. People told me about. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah. And well, then, and when you've been there, when you've been to the
hmm,
gemba of certain things, and you hear certain people make certain statements, you kind of feel like, who's been telling you those lies? You kind of ask yourself those questions, and stuff, and that's sadly one of the things that I think that we're suffering from, a whole lot of generalization and confirmation bias. you know Confirmation bias. We could pick a half a different subjects and stuff like that, and I'm not trying to go there, but I'm just going to say two words which will set any conversation on fire on social media, at least in
hmm.
the world of work that we're involved. Okay, I'm just going to say the words story points. That's it. I'm just going to leave it there. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about
Oh
that.
god.
But there's
Oh.
that, and a few other phrases would just immediately incite riots. You could just picture, torches, pitchforks, banners,
Yeah.
and the funny part is that all that all that metaphor was intended to do was to help people have a frank conversation about what their perception was about something that was being asked of them to do. That's all it was. It was to help them. Well, I'll say it this way. People ask me, "Hey, Marcelo, when you think of agile, how do you describe it?" And I've talked about this before, and I didn't invent this. Okay, the following five words, not me. That honor goes to James Grenning. Um, talk to each other people. 5 words. That's
Yeah.
Agile. Talk to each other people. Okay. So story points, that's really all it was about. And yet we've conflated it into all these other things. And the funny part is, it's not the only thing we do it to. We've done it to a myriad of things out in work.
Yeah, but it's a really good example. And whenever I approach a new client or a new project, I always feel this urge to ask, like, I assume you already tried talking to each other, right? Just to check that 1st, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I always feel like whenever I say that, I feel like I'm insulting them.
Well,
because it's so obvious.
It is the obvious. It is the obvious question. Okay, when I've approached that same sort of situation, and I think anybody who does what we do has had that situation, or at least I would hope that they would have been presented with that situation. Okay. I've learned, yes, through painful scars, that the obvious question, I don't ask it that same obvious way. Okay. I approach it from a question that is basically, what were the results of the things that you have tried? In other words, I try a little something along the line of appreciative inquiry, but putting a point on it. In other words, there needed to have been something that came out of it. What was it, and what was your impression of it? What were the results of what you tried? Okay, let's look at that. Okay. And then hopefully help them reframe looking at it. Okay, because you know what happens is you start to stare at data sometimes, and you kind of get lost with what you were actually looking for or what you were trying to discern from it, because you're just lost in the data.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's the whole forget the forest for the tree, because the tree is like right here, and you forget there's this whole bunch of other stuff, or it's the actual reverse. People get lost in that, you know. Another friend of mine taught me a term many years ago called paradigm induced blindness, which is paradigm induced blindness. In other words, if you're so accustomed to applying a certain frame of reference to a particular set of problems, you get so accustomed to putting on those glasses that you look at the issues in front of you through those preferential glasses. And even if you have other glasses to wear for a different purpose, you will turn around and say, well, it feels like this, so I'm going to wear these sets of glasses to do that. You know, because those are my regular walking around glasses. These are my glasses that I wear when I'm in front of a computer, so that I don't have, you know, as much eye strain. Okay. Again, it generates a different paradigm than the regular Marcello walking around glasses. It's a paradigm that induces a certain view. And I find that all too often we're stuck in those modes, applying that paradigm-induced blindness of Scrum, Kanban, lean agile, safe. Yes, I said it. I am capable of saying the word.
As long as you're not saying it 3 times in front of a mirror, I heard it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. I hear bad things happen when you say that. So, but I tend to find that's what happens, which is why I turn around and say, well, folks, what is the real question we're asking here? You know, what's the real question going on?
But I think that discussion that you're describing is not really about to happen in the future, because people would feed their problems into the AI. I mean, you started with the example of staring into the data and sort of not seeing anything, not seeing the tree, not seeing the forest for a tree. Is that the right way to put it?
Yeah.
I think what people would do is like take this spreadsheet, take this CSV file, and tell me about lead time distribution or whatever you want the LLM to give out. So you're not really using your glasses anymore, right? You're just giving it to someone else and then blame them for it. Like, and when you present it and you get confronted with it, you would just point at the LLM like, oh, that was just a hallucination from the LLM. Don't worry about it. Let's move on.
Right. Yeah. You bring up an interesting topic. Recently, I read an article from a data scientist published in a data science website. I don't have the link handy, but it's probably somewhere in my bookmarks, where they did just that. They took a dump out of, well, I'm going to say the other word that we don't talk about in polite company. It starts with J, ends with A. Okay. Jira. Took the data out of that and did like what you said. And their article was that, oh, well, we can discern team behavior out of the data and help it model forecastability, very easily. The problem with that is, and I'll flip it, is that, again, it gives you part of the information. It gives you indicators, okay, or informers. Because, for example, we like to use the phrase KPI, for example, okay, key performance indicator, okay. I'm not a fan of that word indicator because it's too deterministic, okay. I like to use the letter I in the form of informer, key performance informer. It's information. It might indicate something that you might think useful, okay? But you as a human need to determine whether it actually is indicating what you perceive it to be indicating, which means you as a human need to go and do a little bit more digging. And that was the thing that drew me, where I was like, I think there's something being missed here in this person's article. They're a data scientist, very smart, I'm sure, okay, but this is one of those cases where the paradigm again is inducing a blindness to certain part of the context of the problem that is being ignored, okay, because there's certain potential indications to certain data where you can see rhythms in the performance of a team just by looking at the data. But what does that actually mean? Okay, and I'll give you an example. There were some issues with some teams that we were working with. Okay, and this was an organization that was using SAFe. Okay, and it turned out that by and large, every single team in every single art had the same syncopated problem. Interestingly enough, it was a blip. Okay, looked like a little tiny heartbeat. If you looked at a whole year's worth of data, you might have missed it until you started to zoom in and you see these little blips and you're like, what's going on? Que pasa USA, as I like to say. And going into talking to the RTEs, it turns out that every time they'd come out of a PI planning and stuff like that, the teams were feeling disjointed. They were feeling out of sync with their rhythm. They had lost their groove. This is an Americanism phrase. Whenever a jazz band starts playing, they might be playing different rhythms, using different keys, using different measures. Okay, I'm playing in 7/5. I'm playing in 6/3, and different. But somehow that disconnection still creates a unified rhythm that gets you the feeling that band wants you to follow. Okay,
which is so weird because people like using SAFe or working within that framework, they want this operational rhythm to happen, like this continuous thing that's going on where you have API planning and then you would distribute and go into your teams and plan your little sprints or whatever you do there. And they want this operational rhythm. And
Mhm.
how was it different in your example? Like, why
Yeah.
did they went out of sync?
Well, again, if you didn't go in and start poking around with the humans, okay, and start looking at what wasn't quote unquote data,
Hmm.
it turns out operationally the product owner or the product owner group, okay, that was operating itself was performing disjointedly. In other words, there was very little correlation between the direction of different PI objectives. They
Hmm.
had very little to do with each other. So the team was doing this a whole lot between different PIs. Okay. And when there's no cohesion, or at least no stability to the variability, if you will, of objectives, it's the old, adage of, garbage in, garbage out. If the garbage you're feeding into the team causes them to lose their groove, it's only logical that that's going to be presented in the behavior of the team until they find themselves or
Hmm.
recover the rhythm, if you will.
Does this reflect a lack of leadership in the? I don't know if that was on a product or a service, but at a
Mhm.
product management level, because typically you would assume that there's like one super smart vision about the product or a service, and then you would trickle it down and cut it into release trains.
Mhm.
Oof, still
Yeah.
taste it in my mouth.
Now you're hitting on that other funny hashtag that I use online, hashtag upper management. And the answer is yes. There were some disjointed ideas in their long-term strategy and roadmap. Okay. Because my my experience is open for the internet. I will not name names, but let's just say there were some competing factions up here, so to speak. There were some competing factions.
You're naming a bunch of people that, although
Well,
you don't want to drop names.
people could go and
People
research.
know. People know for sure.
Yeah, people could go and research. My thing is this, and this is funny, that one thing that whenever I've spoken to recruiters, they'll be like, you know, Marcello, you've got your, the folks that you've worked for name names, but you worked for this company with this client and that client, but you're not naming the clients directly. I go, because they weren't mine. Okay. If you personally feel you worked as a consultant for a company and you were working at Capital One and you want to put that on your resume, that's great. More power to you. But for me, and I recognize it's a detriment to me and my CV, my resume, however you want to call it, these companies were clients of the people who were employing me when I was working as a consultant. If I don't have explicit permission, I tend not to name the company on my resume. I've been told, hey, that works against you, and the quote unquote the hiring process and stuff like that. Um, but I think that my public profile and the experience of what I'm putting out there should speak for itself as to my capabilities. Okay. Knowing about what some company was doing or not doing. Um, and there's a little bit of a story behind that, Benjamin, which was at one time when we where I was before this medical device company, which is on my public profile, so you'll now know where it was. Um, we got bought out by a much larger company, and different product managers, product owners were encouraged to get to know the other people from the other operating companies and stuff like that. And having been the one who introduced Scrum, um, you know, a couple of the other managers were like, why don't you put on a little presentation about Scrum, how we're using it? So I took the advice, not thinking anything of it. Okay. And in one of these get-togethers with other managers and other operating companies, I talked to them about how we use Scrum in a regulated environment. Okay. Turned out some manager in one of the other operating companies talked to some other manager in our company. A little misunderstanding ensued, and I got called in front of legal. How dare you give away our intellectual property? And I was like, okay, I was not aware that Scrum is our intellectual property, but okay. And so ever since then, I'm a little more cautious as to when I name who I've done work
Yeah,
for.
I get you, but that's just so stupid of them.
It, odd
But
situation,
yeah,
but being called in front of a legal department, no,
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
comfortable.
One of the episodes on this show that I published was about a case study about a big pharmaceutical company, and we published it, and I falsely thought that we had the permission from PR to publish it, which one of the guys responsible in the background didn't double check. So the CIO of that company had to listen to the full episode on a Sunday. And I had to make changes on a Sunday evening while I was in Croatia. Not even I didn't even have my my notebook with me. So I sort of think I know how stressful that was. But
Yeah,
luckily,
well,
using AI, I could just like recycle all my blah 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 that I put into the microphone before and have a robot mimic me and change the episode. So that
yeah,
was quite convenient. Just with
well,
my phone, it was really good.
we didn't have LLM to be able to do that back then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
the whole thing was, oh, did you clear that presentation? Are you sure that no trade secrets? And it was basically a, this is what Scrum is.
Mhm.
This is how, you know, regulations can be interwoven so you can still deliver your products
Mhm.
and be in compliance. That was the extent of it.
Mhm.
I didn't use any screenshots of our product itself. I mean, they already knew what our product line was. I didn't take any screenshots of any of our metrics and put it
Yeah.
in there. Okay. If I remember correctly, I think I may have even pilfered some screenshots of like burn ups and things off of Google. Google, it's like, okay, yeah, this is what it might look like. I mean,
Yeah.
so, but still, and ever since then, I tend to favor to be more cautious when I'm talking about where I've worked, who I've worked with. Um, it may hurt in some respect, but in my case, I feel just better. It's not worth it. It's
Yeah.
not worth
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I got you. Hey, we've been covering some agile and Scrum topics. Although you sent me three different things that we could talk
Yeah.
about, and I feel like I picked
Well, that,
one and we talked about the other two.
yeah, we did. Yeah, yeah, we did. Yeah, we
You
did.
sent
But
me just for good measure. You send in agile isn't dead because you killed the wrong thing.
mhm,
Business isn't and wasn't buying agility.
yeah,
And I ditched both of them because I thought, well, agile, we already covered that.
yeah,
And then the third one was critical thinking. How do you pronounce it? Clinging, clinging,
clinging,
clinging
clinging. It,
on
it,
for
it
dear life in businesses. I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like,
If
oh
this
yeah,
was the edge of the window, it would be hanging on like
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, and and I feel that it is. And I think when we were in the green room before the beginning of the podcast, I'd said, I dusted off this research that I had started and continued it a little bit, and it actually feels like it's worse. It actually feels like it's worse. Okay. And I'm about to drop something on you in that respect. I mean, because we were thinking about in general, and when I started the research, it was about how AI is being used. Okay, and and um and it's actually from the perspective of generally speaking, is the skill of critical thinking being applied to the, I'm not even going to say to the application, how we're using it, to the even the notion of when and even if to use it.
Mm-hmm.
When and if to use it. Okay. And that's not to say that there are no potential gains. Okay. But when a little bit, and I'm talking about a very simple search, a simple research through the tools that we already have at our disposal, yield something like 95% of generative AI pilots yield zero measurable business impact. Okay. And I'm not just making that flippantly. I'm talking about research coming out of universities, out of very large consulting research groups, some which we know of by name, even by initials. Okay. And at some point, I may dump this out there and let people try to rip it apart. Okay. Full disclosure, I did make use of multiple AIs to help me perform this research.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There are certain spaces where that kind of stuff is very useful. This is happens to be one of those areas. Okay. I'm still researching it because personally, I think that any of these uses still bear human intervention. I'll give you a case in point. This is from the legal profession. Just yesterday, there was a study and I'm not going to say it's a ruling, but it may have been a court ruling. I'd have to go back and read the article again, where the court found, at least here in this country, that we need better systems to address when it is able to be apparently clear that a filing with the court was generated by an AI and was not properly vetted by a human being. In other words, a filing in a case before a court was submitted as evidence. Okay. And upon review, it was recognizable that this filing was generated utterly by an AI. Okay. I mean, then this is recent. This is not like months ago. This is recent, where upon further investigation, they found that no one in the law firm submitting it had actually gone through the brief that was submitted and vetted the things that was being cited by the AI output.
So what was the issue here? Just
That
using AI isn't bad on itself. Not checking it is.
correct. In other words, the critical thinking, the due diligence
Yeah.
in making sure that what you are purporting in front of the court is truthful and accurate. Okay. And that's important because, I mean, this was a civil matter. Okay. Apparently, imagine if it had been a criminal matter and someone is submitting something as truth to the court where someone's life is involved. That's a serious matter. Okay. That's a very serious matter. And another thing that a little bit of my research has done, at least has shown, that there's very little governance involved here. Okay, very little governance. There have been conversations about that many proposals from China themselves to have some worldwide governance, which this country, to its detriment, I'm not going to get into politics, but that I feel are being left unattended to. Okay, they're not being tended to. I think that a lot more work needs to go into that governance, into those areas of even ethics. And the fact that it isn't is, to me anyway, an indicator that we're not applying sufficient critical thinking in
Yeah, and
applying.
maybe we haven't really figured out how to use AI. Have you read Your Brain on LLM.com? Have you done that?
No, I haven't.
That is a super interesting study done by, I hope I'm probably pronouncing the names wrong, Natalia Kosminia and Eugene Hopman.
Mhm.
They did some research and had different groups of people and gave them a task. One had to use no LLM. One had to use, one has to come up with a solution on their own and then use the LLM to correct and improve. And the
Mhm.
other group has to come up, like prompt a solution to the task,
Mhm.
right? And they measured their brain activity and
Mhm.
the result and put all of that data into their research. And what they found is that the worst outcome is prompting the answer right away, because your brain activity is really
Mhm.
low and the quality of the output is really low. The mid version is not use LLM at all. And the best version was to think for yourself, high brain activity, like on the mid version, but then
Mhm.
use the LLM to correct and improve and to really shape it into a good result. And the research is really, really interesting. And it was posted on social media by a couple of fellows on LinkedIn who said using LLMs or using ChatGPT leads to brain rot because it lowers your brain
Yeah.
activity. And when that goes on for multiple years, like if you're not
Mhm.
using a muscle, it deteriorates.
Mhm.
And they see a brain as a muscle. I'm not sure if that's a correct analogy here, but
Yeah.
makes sense how
Yeah.
I look at the world.
Yeah. Some people also cite something that I did find, in doing my research, the MIT Brain Lab study,
Hmm.
which immediately OpenAI attacked, full guns blazing. Okay. But the fact is that they're not the only ones who have been performing this kind of research. I believe Carnegie Mellon is also doing it, and I think the MIT Brain Lab study actually had EEGs. They had people connected to an electroencephalogram to measure brain activity during these different tests that they were running. Okay, and they noted significantly decreased brain activity, just brain activity.
We're
Because
talking
of it.
about the same research.
Okay. Okay. So then
It's the
so we're
same
talking about the
thing.
same,
Yeah.
the same one. I'm correlating because in my mind I connected to the MIT Brain Lab. I wasn't thinking of the researchers. So
Yeah, and I
yeah.
was just on research and I was just about to like find out where they did their research and I couldn't do this in proper time. And then I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah, way too
going by
many
the names.
researchers, other
But
than
yeah,
to remember the name of the actual
yeah,
the actual study itself. It's usually easier. That's my own. That's my own thing. I should
yeah.
probably remember their names too. The other thing, the other thing to note that came out of that is remember how I said earlier about paradigm induced blindness?
Hmm.
That creates a confidence trap. Okay.
Yeah, true.
Now that phrase comes out of some research from Microsoft Research and Carnegie Mellon that says that a lot of use of AI, okay, yields immediately higher confidence in one's own perception. Okay, in other words, you know, a lot of times you have to make decisions with imperfect information, right?
Hmm.
Information insufficiency, as Joseph Pelrine likes to say.
That's like the only
Okay.
case where you have to make a decision, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And so here's the thing that oftentimes, and I believe there's even a study about this is that if you are presented with plausible sounding information and sufficient plausible sounding information, the human brain may tend to just go with it and feel comfortable with just going with it.
You just described every consultancy's business case.
Yeah.
Like, almost every.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just go with it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it sounds good, looks good on a PowerPoint slide. Let's go with it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to name the name of the particular consultancy that comes to mind whenever somebody says that.
Well, everyone knows their name. Everyone knows what
Everyone
happened.
knows their name.
Just recently, and they got sued for it. But yeah.
Yes, but you know that's a subject for a different podcast. You know, the other thing is that it also tends to not just higher confidence in the decision making, but it will also tend to feed into your feelings of overconfidence.
Mm-hmm.
You'll tend to feel more empowered about it. It wasn't just a good decision. It's a great decision, and you overestimate yourself on the basis of that decision. And it's like, okay, sure, not a problem. So,
very much reminds me of the meme that was posted just recently on the net. This is a guy showing a poisonous mushroom to a robot, to the LLM, right? And then next picture is him lying in bed, and the LLM goes, "Oh yes, you're right. This is a non-edible poisonous mushroom. Would you like to know more about poisonous mushrooms?" Well, he was dead in bed, right?
Yeah.
So it's whatever you're feeding them, you're always doing great.
Right. Yeah. I tend not to go for such a violent example, but I draw a line from a song from Paul Simon, and the line's like, "Believing I had supernatural powers, I slammed into a brick wall."
Yeah.
and that's a lot of what happens. Okay.
Although corporate brick walls are fairly soft.
Yes, brick walls are malleable. They're known for their malleability. You know, yeah, absolutely. But and the thing is that we hear about the big faux pas in that. Okay. The guy who lost $50,000 worth of work that he did with, I forget if it was Lovable or Replit.
Replit. It was Replit who deleted the production code.
Correct.
Yeah.
And earlier this week, someone else apparently lost a couple $100,000 through Lovable.
Yeah.
Undoing it. And we only hear about those things, but the fact is that for every one of those, and this would obviously have to be researched, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of other people who have lost hundreds and small thousands of dollars.
Yeah, but those are weekend warriors. Like corporate America, corporate EU doesn't really care, I guess, about those rookie numbers. Just imagine a VC where you go, you found a tech startup in Silicon Valley, and then you go to your VC and say, "Hey, we lost 50K because the LLM deleted our code base." They would probably go like 50K. What is that? A weekend of work? It's not much for corporate.
Yeah,
especially in tech.
Especially in tech, because that then brings us back to their corporate accounting mechanisms. Okay, I find that even today, with the information that we have available, that companies are challenged with being able to truly see accurately their CapEx versus OpEx expenditures. I mean, despite there being international accounting standards rules, which interestingly enough, could even be baked into our work management systems. Okay. One of the questions, that I got asked this about, one particular client, very, very big client, say, do you think can we do CapEx, OpEx with our Agile teams? And I go, of course. How much work are you prepared to work with your accounting folks to ensure that their rules are reflected in how you capture and organize your work in, what are you using again? Jira? Oh, okay, great. How prepared are you to do this? Because it's not just a matter of implementing and flipping a switch. You're going to have to train people for how to recognize what they should be categorizing and how they should be interpreting the data that comes back out the other end so that you can reconcile your accounts. Okay.
Or you could just vibe account Adam Newman style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's probably not gonna go over well long term. Yeah, sure. If you're VCing it, and you're playing, and you're playing Vegas with the money, which is what they're playing a lot with today. All right, they're playing Vegas, and they're trying to figure out who's got that one in whatever chance. Okay, to quote unquote beat the house.
Yeah.
Okay, to beat the house. And sure, great, fantastic. If you can figure out what that use case is that will give you the ROI or the ARR that you're looking for as a VC until you can cash out, okay, more power to you, because at that point it becomes somebody else's problem, But the fact the fact is that all the while, again, of trying to apply that paradigm generally is its own form of paradigm-induced blindness. Okay, if the VCs can do it, if the small little startups can do it, so can we. Never mind that we're sitting on $500 billion worth of pension funds and investments, but sure, we can act like a VC can act. Okay.
And the same is true for big corporations, where they think they can act like startups and try to do their own, like I saw this with Deutsche Bank here in Germany, who got McKinsey hired, and they proposed to them to work with the Spotify model. Back then it was a big thing. Like, everyone wanted to be like Spotify, right?
Yeah.
And it was just such a big failure, because those are two super different universes.
Right.
Like that small Silicon Valley tech startup with the VC on one end, but then having the pension fund manager on the other hand. Those are just like two different things. And sometimes when we talk about agility, I always feel like we dream of this Silicon Valley 5-people garage band that is building something, while at the same time our client is a big insurance company, and we're trying to adopt those terminologies, the language, the techniques, the tech stack, the flexibility. We ask for similar working hours, engagement, like you would do in a Silicon Valley startup, right? And then we wonder why it's going to fail, or why they don't want to participate in that anymore.
Yeah. Because I hypothesized, and again, going back to some of the research I've been doing, it turns out that, and it's an indeterminate number, and it needs more research, but it seems that there's at least anecdotal evidence that even companies that are making a go at it are not cleanly tracking their financial investments against their AI initiatives. They're just throwing cash.
Yeah.
They're throwing cash, hoping that something does stick. Okay. And the thing that correlates with that to me that's very telling is another citation where most most, at least for those that were, I guess, that were that were interviewed or queried about it, is senior leadership's concern that they don't know themselves enough about the potential benefits and pitfalls of this stuff to make cleanly decisions on this sort of matter. And a lot of times they delegate away to some of the technologists for this sort of stuff. Okay. And then there's also the, if we don't, our competitors will.
Yep. But do you have a good way of measuring the ROI on using AI in product development?
Well, I mean, no differently than any sort of cost. Well, not to say cost reduction, to any sort of efficiency or potential outcome. Okay, if you're developing some piece of software, whether you're using AI for it or whether you were just straight designing and developing it, okay, it is the outcome of what you created, of what you delivered, meeting up to expectation, regardless of cost. Period. Doesn't matter. A leader's decision, if I'm going to invest in this, is it going to meet or approximate to some risk tolerance, okay, the amount of effort and money that I threw at it, regardless of what technology I threw at it, because we've been doing this stuff for decades, whether we were doing it, straight hand coding with command line tools, or we were using integrated development environments and case tools like UML data, code generators, because people seem to forget that for a very long time, okay, case products, computer aided software engineering products, have been on the market. Okay. While I was at IBM, I did a little side gig with a little company here in the United States that we were creating the scaffolding for Windows and OS2 presentation manager applications. We would generate the scaffolding code between all your different windows, dialogues, even some of the connecting logic for different controls that we're seeing on the screen. All this was generated through templated code. Okay. Now, mind you, this was a very small context. Now, over time, code templates have taken on a world of their own. Okay. Products like Visual Studio, Borland C++ back in the 90s, those things had built-in entire projects where they would create the scaffolding for everything. Okay. How is that any different than going on to Bolt, Benjamin, and saying, I want to create a website and it's got to have this look and feel? They're going to go back to their library of templates using the information that you gave them and try to approximate what that would look like. It's no different than if you were doing it inside of Visual Studio 20 years ago or 15 years ago. Okay? It's not much different. It's just a broader scope of the kinds of templates that you have available to you. Okay? The difference here is that we knew back then that we had templates we had to work with, and we were going to have to use critical thinking to fill in the blanks. We were going to have to put in the connective tissue. Okay? What I find that we're doing with that today is that we're not just having apps build walking skeleton. We're having it build muscles, tendon, even flesh, even skin, and saying, "Yeah, here you go, brand new human, go out there," and putting it out into the universe. Okay. The problem, as I said before, to answer your question, kind of went roundabout. I apologize for that. Is we tracked on the basis of if we build this, did this validate to some degree our presumption that this was going to be of benefit to our customer and or ourselves for some compensation that is worth the investment. Okay. I'm not seeing that. Okay. And if it is happening, it's being kept very close to the vest by any of the companies that are succeeding with it. And I could understand that because that would be in a competitive advantage for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes totally sense. I'm just
A lot to take
I
in.
read it out because like we would see the increase of efficiency within the numbers of the reporting, like the at the stock exchange listed companies when they report, we would see the gains in efficiencies, but we don't. What we see is layoffs, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that these layoffs
Mm-hmm.
are virtue signaling the increase in efficiency, but
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily have to be backed by actual increase in efficiency
Mm-hmm.
of the company. It's the
Yeah.
same with Twitter. The Twitter numbers look great after they fired a bunch of people. But what happens then, right?
Yeah.
And we
Exactly.
see this with cases here in Europe with Klarna. Not sure if you heard about them.
Oh yeah.
They let go a bunch of people because they thought they could outsource their what is this, their service workers,
Mm-hmm.
like their first level service,
Yeah.
to the AI, then
Mm-hmm.
hired back, then let go a bunch of them as well,
Yep.
again, and then hired them back because they were
Mm-hmm.
always playing this back and forth with the AI, always thinking they're just about to cross the chasm to the AI world where they
Right.
finally can
Right.
reap the
Yeah.
fruits.
Yeah. Well, there's other issues in the buy now, pay later
Oh yeah,
market that have been documented
it's
by other
yeah.
folks. So one while you couldn't excuse that, you could understand, well, they were feeling pressure from their corner of the market to figure out something to let them get themselves out of the hole.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I mean, we don't even have to go into like the moral discussion of whether this is good or bad. It's
Mm-hmm.
just it's w- hmm. We see that happening at Klarna, and I assume it's not the only case. It's just a very present case because they're very outgoing with what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that we see a lot of companies on a similar struggle to really have good benefits using AI, like beyond the 20% GitHub study that we saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 And again, I got to roll this up because one of the things that was
We got to
first.
roll this up because we've been here for a long time.
Oh wow. Wow, wow. Well, this could go on for a lot longer, and maybe this is, if you're amenable to it, a multi-part conversation because there's still a lot more to talk about. A lot more to talk about. Um, you know, it, it you posed the original question to me and said, why do you think critical thinking is clinging on for dear life in business? And it kind of hit me with something that I again, I'm going to do a lot more research when I look into this. But when I first formed this idea, it's like I'm not seeing critical thinking frameworks really being applied well, or just the notion of critical thinking. And I wonder how this has been researched. And I found one research study, this is a while back, this is 2011, that says that our college students only slightly improve their critical thinking skills during college. And here's the kicker: business students are the ones improving their critical thinking skills the least. The least. Why is that? Why is that? Our business students are the ones improving their critical thinking skills the least.
Because business is a very superficial endeavor.
And that may be the linchpin.
Hmm.
That may be the linchpin. Okay. We need critical thinking to make a comeback.
I have to be honest with you. Like, I'm struggling with critical thinking myself these days because it's everything is just moving so fast. Social
Mm-hmm.
media is bombarding me, and I have to run multiple things at once here at this
Yeah.
two-person company. um,
Yeah, I believe it.
and it's for me, critical thinking really. Uh, so I manage to do that when I'm offline, when I completely
Mm-hmm.
disengage from talking to anybody, looking at my phone, being at my desk. It's like when I go for a long walk,
Mm-hmm.
when I go running, when I go cycling. Like, this is the only space
Mm-hmm.
where my brain is like really capable of critical thinking, because it gets
Yeah.
bombarded with solutions to problems I
Mm-hmm.
don't have and answers to questions I haven't asked,
Yep.
if I keep all the noise buzzing in the background. So I think, like, if we want to change that, and
Mm-hmm.
sure, I'm extrapolating here my own thoughts, but um I think people who really value critical thinking will have to just leave leave the discussion and the social media and the corporate space,
Mm-hmm.
and go and be somewhere else,
Yeah.
because the system is not made for critical thinking.
Yeah. Or I, as you pointed out, you went running, you went cycling. You could just go to a park. Go to a park. Go to a park where there where you are not surrounded. Hard to do in an urban setting, but if you can get back into some sort of non-urban setting, even for a few moments,
Mm.
even for a few moments, disconnect from the technology, okay, and just quietly think
or
without
or
connection to internet. Well,
don't think at all.
that's true too.
I,
That's true
I
too.
in in
That's too
in in
true.
my experience, it helps way more not to think about something when you want to think
Mm-hmm.
critically about something, to gain some intellectual distance from
Mm-hmm.
the topic that you look at. Like, we started with, you're in front of a
Mm-hmm.
tree and you don't see the forest. Um, I think it's the same with trying to focus on something and think critically about a topic. Do something
Mm-hmm.
else. Pet a dog, whatever,
Right.
right? Touch some
Right.
grass would be what everybody's using on the internet. um, and don't think about it. And when you come back, you will be looking at it from a bit more distance, a bit more grounded,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes it easier. That distance makes it easier to not be emotionally involved in it,
Right.
to not be overwhelmed by your own ego. At least for
Mm-hmm.
me, it makes huge difference.
Oh,
Like, not
I,
thinking about it.
absolutely. I don't know if I'm gonna get myself into trouble, but one of the things that that we were able to do to be able to do that back in the day is we'd
Hmm.
hop on a video game, something completely different. And the reason I'm saying this is because today Google's logo is about Pac-Man. I don't know if you open a Google page, it's about Pac-Man. And um, interestingly enough, down the street from IBM, there was an arcade. Okay, we had
Hmm.
video games before
Yep.
you could have an Atari at home, but there was an arcade. And one of the things that sometimes we would permit ourselves, because we were doing some pretty long hours, but some of the things we permit ourselves is go over there, grab a few quarters, and play, for half an hour, 45 minutes, you know, chase the freaking banana, chase the freaking ghosts, that kind of stuff. Try to, try to destroy the centipede and that kind of stuff. Um, and give your brain a different challenge.
Yeah.
And you'd be able to come back and think a little bit more clearly about the things that you were working on before you gave your brain this break,
Yeah,
if
100%.
you will. You fed your brain a different thing. So that's a good thought. I'm going to think about what I'm going to feed my brain differently today, Benjamin. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to carve 5 big ass pumpkins for Halloween.
Oh, very nice.
So that's
very nice.
my task for this evening. They're like this
fantastic.
big. It's insane.
Ooh, fantastic.
I'm going to throw the leftovers in the compost, and next year I will be running a pumpkin business, I assume.
Wow. Hey,
because they grow like they're pests.
economy of scale, man. If people will pay for that, I
just dump it on the roadside, just so I can pick them up.
Hey, nature will reclaim anything.
Yeah,
nature will reclaim anything.
Yep.
You know, we are the intervention in that. We're the intervention.
All right, man. It was good talking to you. I really enjoyed it.
I did as well. I know we had a little technical difficulty. I'm gonna have to figure out what's wrong with the mic here in a minute. But other than that, it was an absolute pleasure. If you want to have that octagon, I'm there.
Yeah,
I'm there.
I mean,
might wear a different hat though.
It would be so cool, but at the same time, I think I would enjoy it as long as it goes. But after that, I would need to shower and be a bit depressed, probably. Not sure.
No,
depends on the guest list, I guess.
No, I think probably the right way. I think probably the right way to go after something like that is to go grab a cold beer.
Probably.
Go pour yourself a pint. Go to your favorite pub. Or go to your refrigerator if you keep it there. But
all right. Thinking about the octagon, what do you think of this? Maybe there is a conference or something else where we could meet in person. We rent out a pub for an evening, and we just set up microphones and cameras, and we just do the octagon in the pub while drinking.
That would be very interesting.
Like if you help me gather those folks and find a good schedule, I'll organize the rest.
Oh boy. We would have to find the right pub for that.
Yeah.
Because we have standards.
Yeah, and it's also hard to get everyone on the same place. Oh, yeah. So not everyone could sit on their own pub. We should meet like somewhere. I don't know what somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean probably makes it easy. That's for everyone.
Possible. Yeah, that's very possible. That could work. That could work. So Benjamin, again, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking the bait, so to speak, and letting me on.
I really enjoyed it. Hey, have a good day.
You too, Benjamin. Thanks so much for having me again.
You're welcome.
Have a great evening.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Anytime. Bye. Oof, what a long episode. But hey, you made it. Are you still awake? Are you sleeping? Anyway, thank you so much for sticking around. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you like those fun episodes that I put in once in a while, and I could make a bunch of more. I'm really enjoying those types of episodes where we just can have a relaxed, good laugh at things. So let me know whether you like those. And as always, I hope you have a great week and see you on the next one. Bye.